All right, everyone. I hope you had a blessed weekend with your family and loved ones. Starting the week with some big developments ngayon. Itong elections over the weekend kung saan, as expected, of course, nanalo ang ruling party na Democratic Progressive Party of Taiwan. At ito, of course, ito yung progressive party nila. Ito yung partido na much closer dun sa idea ng Taiwanese separate identity. Para sa mga kritiko naman, ito yung partido na that is usually sympathetic at is supposedly more sympathetic dun sa pro-independence sentiments sa Taiwan. Although of course, as we'll discuss later on, pagdating naman sa most likely under the incoming Lai administration, expect natin that they're going to be very responsible and they're going to have a very balanced approach kung saan i-assert nila yung separate Taiwanese identity pero hindi sila mag-push for any kind of referendum or de jure declaration of independence, which of course could trigger a total war with China. Now, balikan natin itong issue na ito, anong nangyari sa Taiwan at anong implication ito para sa Pilipinas. Many things to catch up on. Of course, I hope folks napanood nyo yung mga review natin ng Gomburza the other day. And please, if you didn't have a chance to check it, go and check it out on our different platforms. Uh, you know, it anyways, perhaps is the beginning of a new golden era cinema. Anyway, it is a renaissance for Philippine cinema. Now, balikan natin itong issue. Malaking implication ito sa Pilipinas. Also politically and potentially even morally. Speaking of, if you look at the very close to Taiwan, na pagdating dun sa mga strategic calculus ng Pilipinas at in terms of gaining access to bases north of the Philippines is because of the Taiwan question. So kung ano mangyari sa Taiwan, in one way or another, it is gonna dun sa ating, but more gonna also strategic. So in short, hindi natin mahiwalay ang nangyayari sa Taiwan dun sa mga nangyayari sa pagitan ng Pilipinas, China, at Amerika. All of these are very much related and related. Din tayo mga kababayan at kaibigan sa Taiwan, no, as you know, ang ASEAN and Filipino community dyan sa Taiwan, marami sa kanila na meet natin nung visiting scholar ako sa National Cheng Chiu University a few years ago just before sa Taiwan is ating mga OFWs, ang ating mga kababayan. But whether we like it or not, that's that's not unfortunately that's not going to be the only concern. But concern din ng Pilipinas when it comes to things that are that of ASEAN countries, perhaps of all countries in the world. Siguro ang Pilipinas ay nasa top 3 if top 5 directly major happen. Why? Please pay attention to what's happening in Taiwan. And then on side note, I don't not to trivialize the situation, of course, yung mga kababayan natin na hindi pa nakapunta sa Taiwan. Ang dami kong kilala mga Pilipino na nakapunta sa kung saan corner of the world, pero hindi nakapunta sa Taiwan na napakalapit sa atin. Well, I love the culture. Over 1 hour away from Manila to Taipei, and in the north to wala pang 20 minutes yan with flight, di ba? So napakalapit ang Taiwan. And geography is geopolitics, no? So pag-usapan lahat natin mga yan. But before going in Philippines, ating national security, EDCA, Philippine-China, US Triangle, let's sa Taiwan to begin with para lang makaka-catch up tayo ng konti. Obviously, you're free to check my writings, including upcoming writings. legal implications, ipopost natin yan. Actually, if you just, you're gonna see some information. But I will post you, ifo-forward ko rin kung may mga bagong articles tayo. But in the meantime, let me just give you an overview dun sa mga medyo basa, right? Ayan, yung mga pulvoronic. Ayan, yung mga TikTokers natin. Masal ko sila. Yung mga pulvoronic yan. Okay, yung mga tinatamad. Pulvoronic, ayan. Makinig na lang kayo dito. Alright, bibigyan natin ng crash course. And of course, by the way, congratulations sa ating mga Madridistas. Yan, nanalo tayo ng Super Cup laban sa Barcelona. Of course, I have nothing against Barcelona, but you know, heart ano tayo, very ano tayo, die hard Madridista po tayo. So congratulations. William Lai administration. Pag-usapan natin yan. So, these are the numbers. So, the race actually was, I was in Taiwan a few months ago, and I remember, actually, iba sa inyo, you were able to watch live, papasok si William Lai dun sa event namin sa Taiwan. Give a speech on my pages, no? Especially sa natin si William Lai coming in. I found him very relaxed. I found him very self-assured and self-confident. Definitely not flashy. Not demagogic. Definitely not Jean provocateur. So let's just hope for responsible statesmanship and for continuing the good legacy of the outgoing Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. Because in fairness to President Tsai Ing-wen, I know marami siyang critics inside Taipei, marami siyang critics outside Taipei. But I think overall she was able to prevent any major diplomatic crisis with China. The only major event that happened during the Tsai Ing-wen administration, hindi ito kasalanan ni Tsai Ing-wen, kasalanan ito ng mga Amerikano, right? Or kasalanan din yan ng mga Chino. And this was the ni former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi sa Taipei. I'm not sure how much that was instigated on the some are saying that was more sariling sikap ni then outgoing. Of course, that's what experts call yung most viewed video natin, analysis natin is actually in the Taiwan crisis noong August 2022, close to 500,000 views. So I'm glad that there's a lot of interest. No, I'm glad that there's a lot of interest pagdating sa developments sa Taipei, straight, which of course, you know, as you know, medyo binash natin ng konti the other month, kasi sabi ko, parang yung mga pinapost ko sa West Philippines, parang ano. Anyway, mga pang-usapan yan, balikan natin itong TikTok later. To Taipei, and katulad ng kita mga ibang followers, finance version of this. So if you look at it, the elections, these were candidates. Philippines was supposed to look like, which was like a two-party systems or dominant two-party systems. For the first time in a very long time, actually, the third party, the TPP, and Wo Xin very well, very, very well. It won close to 4 million, equal to 26.46% of the votes. The Kuomintang party, which used to be the dominant party for almost what, half a century, and then still managed to win elections during democratic elections. So actually had the chance to meet back Ho Yuhi and Jia Xiaokong. They managed to win close to 4,671,000 votes. So that's equal to 30. So put together, if you look at the TPP party and Goming, that's more or less 60% of the vote. Cost split parties na yan, that provided the opening for Lai race together with Xiao Bi Kim at 40%. So just over 40%, 40.05%, and close to 6 million votes. Now, this is lower than 57% votes that Tsai Ing-wen won in the previous elections in 2020. Significantly lower, but because it was a three-way race, to pretty comfortable lead. Because if you look at the lead between number one and number two, that's the DPP and the Kuomintang Party. That's a huge lead. That's more than 1 million votes. Six versus seven, and right. Now there were concerns that the race was closing because, as I said, I remember when in August I was in Taiwan and listening to William Lai. He had the race began to the final result, it was a comfortable win. But as I already mentioned a while ago, if internal party politics, tapo politics, whatever you want to call it, hindi pumayag either si Ho or si Ko na bumaba. Karoon ng unity. Right. So, had the TPP and Kuomintang form a unity, then they would have defeated the DPP party. Right? Even if the DPP party was able to secure a significant plurality of the votes at around 40% or so. The overall voting turnout was around 72%, so that's 3% lower than the previous elections, but established democracies. So that's quite interesting if you look at that. Now, dun sa parliamentary race, if you look at the Taiwanese DPP party, 51 seats out of 100 plus. Is it 130? Legislative yuan. They only lost by one because the Kuomintang won 52 seats, but neither of them have a majority. So actually, of the legislature of Taiwan is still up for grabs because the TP party actually won 8 seats, and if I'm not mistaken, the independents have 2 seats. So around 10 seats will determine where who will control. So it's not necessarily 100% sure that the opposition will control the legislative one. So there's still some slight chance that the DP party will hold on to both the legislature and the executive, although I'd rather not bet on that. um, Ahead of the race, damage to China. They've been bashing the DPP party and essentially war against voting for the DPP party because they see them as renegades. They see them as troublemakers. And if you look at some of the headlines coming out there, there will be severe punishment. If ever nanalo yung DPP party na more pro-independence than the other party, especially Kuomintang. Well, as I said, even the DPP is making sure that they don't openly provoke China and give an excuse. If you look at some of the more right wing American or Western occasions, they look at how China has if Taiwan moves towards something more dramatic. Now, it looks like none of these threats by China really work. In fact, a lot of military exercises around Taiwan. Only after yung Nancy Pelosi visit, also there were concerns about alam nila, uh, yeah, actually Taiwan in 18, if not mistaken, elections, party na alleged to influence. Ironically, was kalaban of Communist Party back during the Civil War years. There has been fears that China will be able to find elections, sabotage elections, and bully the party. But none of that happened. None of that actually happened. What happened eventually was uh, the come together. But importantly, I'm super excited about Taiwan, but I have to do this part because before we go to the broader regional implications, we have to look at what happened inside Taiwan first, diba? I know. Okay, so if you look at it, this is an interesting survey by National Chengchi University, which actually I used to be based there as a visiting scholar. So if you look at this survey, it's very interesting. Now, as you know, of course, Taiwan is technically called Republic of China. They consider themselves as the true heir of what Sun Yat-sen began more than 100 years ago. And in Taiwan, ethnic background. A lot of them, well, a huge number of them speak Mandarin or Chinese. A lot of them also speak Japanese, by the way, because of the colonial history, which was not as bad as what we had in the case of the Philippines. If you look at it, if dito sa survey niyan, halos, yeah, I mean, it's vast majority of Taiwanese, sorry, over time, more and more Taiwanese from 92 all the way to 2023, end of 2023. If you look at the green arrow there, you could see, so from just around 20% of Taiwanese, now close to 70% of Taiwanese consider themselves as primarily Taiwanese, right? So they see themselves as belonging to a de facto separate nation. Consider themselves as only Chinese has significantly reduced over time. And then those who see themselves as both Chinese and Taiwanese, it's also on a steady secular decline. So the Taiwanese sense of identity has significantly increased. And that's why, actually, ang nangyari dito is kahit yung mga seemingly pro-China candidates, even they had to tone down the rhetoric, and even they had to essentially renounce, or not only renounce, but eschew or shun any serious discussion of reunification with China. Kasi alam niyo naman, di ba? Ang idea dyan is both ang disagreement nila is it the regime that escaped the Taiwan and eventually created the foundations of what we today call the Republic of China, or is it the communist regime in Beijing? Right? So both of them agree that there's one mother China, but they don't agree on whom should sovereignty lie. But the reality is that both Taiwan and China are moving in a much more confrontational direction because Taiwanese are feeling less and less attached to China, and they're feeling more and more de facto independent, although they're not moving yet towards a de jure declaration of independence that no one wants war, no one wants to control China. At the same time, in China rin, more or New Year speech ni Xi Jinping on Taiwan, he effectively said that all options are still on the table. That as President Xi Jinping or paramount leader Xi Jinping said, Taiwan and China will surely be unified, right? Dun sa kanyang New Year's Eve speech. So Beijing is implying, well, not implying, they're accusing Taiwan of moving towards de facto independence, and they're accusing them of being agent provocateurs. But for Taiwanese, not only do they feel more Taiwanese, but they also feel that they're being more bullied to assert the Chinese positions, right? And for ang pasaway dito yung Taiwan, ang pasaway dito yung Amerika, at pasaway dito yung mga ibang tulad ng Pilipinas. Parang kayo nagtitrigger, no? At kayo nag-undermine the so-called one China policy. That we are all supposedly gonna agree with. Now, interestingly, if you look at it, this is very interesting. So there's pressure on Xi Jinping to also be tougher in the even though he doesn't want war, right? Because he also cannot afford war. Alam niyo naman, it will be devastating also for China if you look at the war scenario. Letting go. At the same time, sa Taiwan, ayaw rin nila ng giyera, right? Because alam China from a position of weakness or subservience. And at the same time, because of Taiwanese feel very strongly as Taiwanese, he's also not in a position to talk about reunification or anything that would make the Chinese president happy. So we have a dangerous deadlock. So everyone wants to go. Everyone is also unhappy with to go at the same time. Situation, right? So we have a deadlock. So what do you expect to happen in the coming? What do you expect to happen in the coming weeks and months? On threatening from doing anything crazy under the I think the incoming president also of Taiwan is going to responsible. I'm going to try to maintain good relations with China, but at the same time, my red line side. We're not going to undermine actually the fact of Taiwan. So it's a very tricky situation. But I think as that deadlock holds, China is going to tighten the rules. More sanctions on Taiwan, Taiwanese exports, especially exports galing dun sa mga areas na sumusuporta sa DPP party to indirectly, support the opposition party perhaps, right? Or to at least undermine the ruling party. Hindi ako magtataka if China will also push with more military activities around Taiwan to intimidate them, right? And so forth, right? So this is what's expected. So ang tanong dyan is what is gonna break the deadlock? And I think that's where everyone is is doing something pasaway and undermining their position. And at the same time, neither Xi Jinping nor Lai are in a position to lose face because each of them are accountable to their domestic constituencies, who is pushing more and more for, well, at least in case of China, more maximalist position. There's some by some friends and colleagues in Singapore and others that shows that actually a lot of middle class Chinese want a more aggressive response. President Xi is also under pressure inside China. In case of President Lai, although the Taiwanese people want, also do not want reunification. So di ba? Sino mag-adjust, di ba? Yun ang essentially problema natin. Sino mag-adjust ngayon? At habang both sides are unlikely to adjust, then we're gonna be in a tricky situation. Wait lang. Tanggalin ko lang to. So since both sides don't want to adjust, we're gonna be in a tricky situation. I think, sorry dun sa audio kasi nawakan ko tayo. I think that's disrupting the audio here. Okay, now let's get back to this. So what does this mean for the Philippines? What does this mean the Philippines, diba? So again, to summarize, no, sorry, dun sa mga medyo nakat ng connections and all. Let me just summarize this once again. Parang ginawa natin classroom. I-summarize natin ulit yan. Okay. I-summarize ulit natin yan. So this is the dangerous deadlock that we're seeing right now in the cross-strait relations. On one hand, nagsuslow down yung economy ng China. On one hand, since nag-consolidate ng power si paramount leader President Xi Jinping, Chairman Xi Jinping, the pressure is on him to assert yung strong position of China na dapat mag-reunify sila with Taiwan in the near future while he's still in power. At the same time, President Xi Jinping doesn't want conflict because he knows that the conflict will be devastating for the Chinese economy, or even worse, because it's going to potentially draw in other countries like United States, Japan, and also potentially the Philippines, no, among others. And Taiwan is going to put a very good fight, and Taiwan is way more well-armed and way more defensible than Ukraine when Ukraine was invaded by Russia, right? Taiwan is an island. Ukraine was just next to Belarus and Russia, and Taiwan is a developed country with a very advanced military-industrial complex compared to what Ukraine was when it was first invaded in February of last year. At the same time, if you look at the situation in Taiwan, President Lai, who belongs to the DPP party, is not going to push for something provocative like a referendum on independence of Taiwan, but at the same time, he understands that vast majority of Taiwanese, close to 70%, feel as solely Taiwanese, right? And that strong sense of Taiwanese-ness, right, means that talks of reunification with China is a kind of a no-go. In fact, during the elections, even the more pro-Beijing elements had to kind of tone down any discussions of reunifications. When former President Ma Ying-jeou of KMT tried to talk about reunification, etc., he was somehow snubbed by his own party, right? So in that situation, sino mag-adjust, right? So both sides don't want conflict. Both countries have been grappling with some sort of economic slowdown and growing disaffection of their youth. So both youth in Taiwan and youth in China are facing, growing unemployment and economic uncertainty. At the same time, both sides cannot lose face, and both sides have positions that are increasingly irreconcilable. So we're in this very, very dangerous deadlock. And honestly, I don't know what it takes for things to move in the right direction. I think the best thing we can hope is that in the coming months and all, whatever China does, Taiwan will continue to take a responsible, statesman-like position, not to say anything provocative, be very careful about its positioning, and hopefully, also on the part of China, they're going to be a responsible great power and realize that they cannot bludgeon Taiwan into submission, and the strength of this Taiwanese identity is just too strong for any Taiwanese leader, even from a KMT party, to talk about unity at this point in time, reunification at this point in time. So it's about keeping things on an even keel, and then siguro slowly rebuilding yung mga freight cross-straits communication channels which were severed around 8 years ago when Taiwan first won. So we really need strong statesmanship on both sides, just when there's pressure on both Lai and Xi Jinping to stay strong. But gladly, both are also playing relatively weaker cards because of the economic problems at home. And in the case of Lai, also divided government that he may potentially face if he doesn't build a major coalition in the government. So, eto po yung situation niya, right? When it comes to Taiwan, China, relations, and the implications for the region. Now, we can have a whole conversation about the US aspect, but let me first talk about the Philippines, right? Let's pag-usapan natin ng Pilipinas because pag tinignan mo ang Pilipinas, ang laki ng stake natin sa nangyayari ngayon sa Taipei, right? We have a very big stake in what's happening in Taipei right now because if you look at the situation in Taipei, wait lang, na-disconnect ba tayo? The internet yata is... Sayang naman lahat ng sinabi dito. Wait lang, oh. Sorry guys, mukhang na-disconnect yata ako dito, ah. Yikes. Pinaghirapan natin to. Ano ba yan? Sorry guys, hindi ko alam may internet problem. Hindi yata kaya ng multiple platforms sabay-sabay, ah. Yeah, inayos ko na yung audio yung tinanggal ko na dito. One second, sorry. Bakit na-disconnect to? Okay, never mind. Okay. Kailangan ko lang i-record yung part na yun, guys, kasi may mga maps tayo, no? Sayang naman kung hindi ko ilalabas. Kaya pasensya na kailangan. Kasi para repost ko rin sa inyo later and afterwards. Okay? 1 second lang. Apologies for that. Ito yung part na mahalaga kasi si mahal na mahal ko kaya pinipilit ko lahat ng platforms tuloy, hindi pala kaya ng internet. Up to 3 lang yata, 2 lang kaya. Okay. Okay, go na tayo. Alright, mukhang guys na disconnect tayo kanina. Ulitin natin tong part na to kasi importante yung gumagamit tayo ng mga graphs and tables and all of that. So, just to summarize, what I was talking about a while ago. Ang sinasabi natin is that we have a dangerous deadlock right now in the cross-strait relations because both President Xi Jinping and also President Lai of Taiwan, both of them cannot lose face. No, when you look at the case of China, it has a slowing down economy, and now that Xi Jinping has essentially fully consolidated power in himself, he's gonna take a blame. He's gonna be blamed for anything that doesn't go right. And more Chinese, especially middle class Chinese, want the country to take a more assertive stance on the international stage. At kasama din dyan, base sa mga surveys at mga pag-aaral na nakita natin, kasama din dyan yung idea na yung China has to reunify with Taiwan with force if necessary. No, at kung tinignan nyo yung mga speeches ni President Xi Jinping throughout the years, he has made it very clear all options are on the table. Now, having said that, on the other side with President Lai, he also recognizes that the vast majority of Taiwanese have a very strong sense of a separate Taiwanese identity. So the idea of reunification with China, especially after what happened in Hong Kong, is not something very politically palatable. Not to mention, of course, the DPP is known as having a strong sense of Taiwanese identity themselves. And critics would even suggest that deep inside, perhaps they want a full declaration of independence for Taiwan, which is not something that they have in mind as far as both President Tsai Ing-wen, outgoing President Tsai Ing-wen, and the incoming President Lai is concerned. At least that's where you see responsible statesmanship. But the good thing is, I think both countries, because they're facing a lot of domestic discontent, a lot of economic uncertainty, a lot of youth disaffection, nakita natin yan both in China and also in Taiwan. And also because in the case of Taiwan, you're going to see a much more divided government. Most likely the legislature will be controlled by opposition. So what's happening here is that there's going to be pressure on both sides to find some sort of understanding. Both are not going to admit to that. I think China will tighten the screws and try to impose sanctions on Taiwan, economic sanctions, do more military exercises. But hopefully behind the scenes, there's going to be some conversations about how to make sure that, and hopefully there'll be a move towards restoration of severed cross-straits communication channels, something that happened more than 8 years ago, right? Now, going to the Philippines, bakit dapat may paki tayo sa Taipei, right? Bakit tayo dapat may paki sa Taipei? That is because, if you look at Taipei, ayan, disconnect na naman. Ma, naka-on ba yung TV doon? Hindi kaya. It keeps on disconnecting. Hindi kaya. Sorry guys, nagdi-disconnect to. Whew. Third world problems. Mahal pa naman ang internet natin and all of that, ganyan pa rin ang nangyari. Ito last na to. Hopefully this one will work. Wait lang, huwag kayong drama. Ito na, okay na. Ayos na, okay. May on kasi ng TV doon. Okay, ito na. Let's go na to the Philippines part. Okay, bakit dapat may pakita tayo sa Pilipinas pagdating sa pangyayari dyan sa Taiwan, right? Well, geography is a big explanation and geopolitics accordingly. Katulad ng mga vlogs natin before, pinag-usapan natin na whatever happens in Taiwan will have direct implications in the Philippines. First of all, because of the distance. If you look at Taipei from Manila, it's very, very close. In fact, Manila is closer to Taipei than almost all major ASEAN capitals. Vietnam is more than 2 hours away. Singapore and Kuala Lumpur are more than 3 hours away. Jakarta is almost 4 hours away. Bangkok is, again, more than 2 or 3 hours away. So I can go on and on and on. Mas malapit pa sa atin ito Hong Kong, and definitely mas malapit sa atin ang Taipei. So the geography matters a lot. But the thing with the Philippines is that the seat of power is actually here in Luzon. And if you look at Luzon's proximity to Taiwan, then the geography is even starker, right? Now, let me also give you some idea about ano implication ito for Philippine-China relations and also Philippine-US relations. Pag tinignan mo yung EDCA bases, okay, so ito yung mga EDCA bases. Karamihan ng mga bagong bases na binigay natin sa Amerika sa ilalim na EDCA, or bases whereby the Americans will have more access to, based on the EDCA, ito yung sa mga northern parts of the Philippines. Sa Cagayan, sa Isabela, And increasingly, we're looking at also the Batanes area. And if you look at the Batanes area, it's super close to Taipei. Super close to Taipei. No? Look at it. Look at this one, for instance. So if you look at the Mavulis Island, kung saan meron tayong actually military base, sobrang close siya sa Taiwan. And the thing is, over the past year or so, dinidevelop natin yung ating mga military facilities dyan sa Mavulis. So this is a picture of actually a ceremony we had in Mavulis. So yon, this is where you can see what happens in Taiwan has direct implications for the Philippines. Because pag magulo sa Taiwan, or kung tingin natin na pwede magkaroon ng giyera over Taiwan, or tingin natin either Taiwan or China or both are moving towards confrontation, then immediately, ang laki ng epekto ito dun sa ating mga calculations pagdating sa EDCA and inevitably also the West Philippine Sea. Kasi pag ikaw ang China, hindi mo siniseparate ang nangyayari sa West Philippine Sea, sa nangyayari sa Taiwan. Lahat yan kasama sa isang theater sa kanila yan. Right? All of these are part of China's so-called first island chain. Right? So from East China Sea, Japan, Okinawa, down to Taiwan cross straits, down to South China Sea, West Philippine Sea, lahat yan isang theater yan for China. So when ang Pilipinas ay nagbibigay ng access to America dun sa EDCA ng mga bases from Cagayan and Isabela all the way potentially sa Batanes and then down pag tinignan natin for instance sa Pampanga area, Basa Air Base and all the way down to Palawan in Bautista Air Base. Lahat 'yan, 'di ba? Kung ikaw ang China, maging worried ka talaga. And sa aking palagay, isa sa mga dahilan na napaka-agresibo ang China sa Pilipinas over the past few months, nang ilang beses na water cannon tayo ng China, ilang beses na tinitreaten tayo ng military intervention if not-push tayo ng fortification ng ating facilities dyan sa Second Tangwasya. Kasi kung titingnan mo, yung sa Ayungin Shoal, ang tagal na yan eh. 1998 pa yan, nandyan na tayo. Pero ngayon lang nag-iingay ng China ng big time. Right? At kung titingnan mo yung EDCA, ang tagal na rin yung EDCA na yan eh, di ba? 2014 pa na-negotiate, pero ngayon lang sila nag-iingay ng sobra-sobra. At para sa akin, ito ay dahil may malaking Taiwan aspect dyan. May malaking Taiwan aspect dyan. Kasi sa akin palagay, ang China ay natatakot na ang gagawin ng Pilipinas, specifically ang gagawin ni BBM is, bibigyan yung US military ng maraming access dun sa mga bases na napakalapit sa Taipei, Taiwan. Now, obviously, pagdating sa Amerika, ang justification nila dito is, kung malakas tayo, in terms of yung mga cooperation natin sa Taiwan, kung yung presence natin sa region ay malakas, then magdadalawang isip ang China na sumugod sa Taiwan. Ang tawag po dyan is deterrence, right? Kaya nga the Roman saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. Because, pagkaharap mo isang bully, kung tingin niya mahina ka or hindi ka lalaban, lalo kang bubulin, di ba? Pero kung alam niya na pwede kang lumaban at hindi lang pwede kang lumaban, actually pwede ka rin hurt back sa kanya, yung tinatawag na poison shrimp or tinatawag na porcupine strategy. Yes, of course, mas malakas ang China. Pero kung alam nila there'll be a major cost if ever they invade Taiwan, then hindi nila gagawin yan. That was exactly the problem with Ukraine. Kaya ngayon man nagsasabi na ang Pilipinas or Taiwan magiging Ukraine 2.0, hindi nila alam pinagsasabi nila. Or actually mga sinungaling mga propagandisto mga to. Because Ukraine had no military alliance katulad ng Pilipinas with any major power. And unlike Taiwan, it didn't even have a de facto alliance or kind of a secret kind of high-level military cooperation with any of the major powers. Well, behind the scenes, alam natin Taiwan has that with the United States. And they're buying major weapons from the United States. And the other big difference between Taiwan and Ukraine is that Taiwan is actually where the world's most important modern technology is being built. Semiconductors, which is what runs everything that we're using right now. That's computers, cars, weapon systems. So the United States has an interest in Taiwan not being invaded and definitely not being conquered by China, given that TSMC of Taiwan is responsible for what? More than a third of total semiconductors in the world and more than 90% of high-end semiconductors in the world. So Taiwan is just so important that the US has an interest in making sure that it will not be invaded by or occupied by China. No? And that's why papasok ang Pilipinas because ang lapit natin sa Taiwan and may mga military bases tayo, katulad ng sinasabi kong Mavulis, but also lower down, if you look at in Cagayan, Isabela, etc., ang lapit na to sa Taiwan eh. At least sa Bashi Channel or yung tinatawag natin na Luzon Straits. So, walang... so, there's just no scenario whereby pwede maging neutral ang Pilipinas. Sa sobrang lapit natin sa Taiwan, ang laki ng interest ng mga higanteng bansa na ang Pilipinas ay magsaside sa kanila. So it's either you side with China or you side with the United States. There's no way around it, right? I don't know how the siding with the China will work because I think the siding with China will only work if totally i-cancel natin yung alliance natin with the United States, right? And mag-totally neutral country tayo katulad ng, well, back in the day it was Sweden and Finland, but think about I don't know Switzerland or something like that. Pero even in medyo mahabang debating issue ng neutrality. But yun nga hindi pwede na sasabihin ng Pilipinas na maging neutral lang kami. Words are not gonna be enough. If you're China, you're gonna look at actions and you're gonna look at the scenarios. And as far as actions are concerned, ang tinitingnan ng China ngayon is this. Binibigyan natin ng EDCA bases ang mga Amerikano sa pinaka-north ng Philippines. Hindi yung super north of Philippines, which is like Mavulis, for instance, but at least very north na close to Taiwan, right? Now, clearly may operational implications yan. So kung ikaw ang China at gustong sumugod sa Taipei, and then alam mo, from north tutulungan ng Japan ang Taiwan because napakalapit ang Ryukyu Islands and Okinawa sa north of Taiwan. And then alam din niya yung Pilipinas na katulad ng Japan na isang treaty ally, ang pwede rin tumulong sa US by giving access to Americans, if not more, then automatically tatratuin tayo as enemy, right? But of course, China is smart. China is not gonna wait for the situation whereby sobrang dami ng mga US bases to the north and to the south of Taiwan. So as early as right now, ito ang kutob ko, the reason why sobrang aggressive yung China dyan sa West Philippines is because gusto nila tayong takutin. And I think their concern is that baka bibigyan natin ng sobrang daming military bases ng mga Amerikanos na hindi lang malapit sa West Philippine Sea, pero malapit rin sa Taiwan. Yun talaga yung malaking worry ng China ngayon. Now for me, in theory, that's actually something interesting for the Philippines. Bakit ka mo? Because ang pwedeng gawin ng Pilipinas, in theory, again, in theory lang yun, is sasabihin niya, okay, ganito na lang. Hindi ko masabi na maging neutral ako totally kasi treaty alliance eh. Allies cannot be neutral during time of war. Kung may mga namatay na Amerikano dyan na may giyera sa Taiwan, hindi mo pwede sa, ay sorry ha, neutral kami. Hindi mo pwede sabihin kasi aliado kayo. So either you're with us or against us. That's when war comes, you have to choose, right? And de facto, ang choice mo ngayon US because US ally ka. But ang pwede sabihin ng Pilipinas, pwede sabihin ni BBM ay ganito. Okay, hindi ko, syempre US ally kami, at gusto namin malakas yung situation namin sa West Philippine Sea. Kasi kung aminin natin mga kaidar, di ba? Kung mag-isa lang Pilipinas, katapat mo ang China, good luck sa'yo. Kaya nga walang kwenta yung sinasabi ng mga ibang ka-DDS natin dyan na, hindi, diplomacy lang tayo. Walang kwentang diplomacy kung wala kang leverage, kung wala kang backup. Kung mag-isa mo lang, tapos mahina ka, maliit ka lang, hindi ka sila respetuhin. Kaya ano pa ng digong, walang binigay na compromise ang China. Anong nakuha ni Digong sa China? Pogo. Diba? Lalong lumalang ang situation yung nangyari sa Reed Bank noong 2019, nung nangyari sa Juan Felipe Reef, lahat yan nangyari sa panahon ni Digong kasi hindi siya nirespeto dahil mahina tayo on our own. So, ang pwedeng gawin ng Pilipinas ngayon is, and ididikit ko ngayon dun sa situation sa Taiwan ngayon, dahil both Taiwan and China ay nasa isang deadlock situation. But the part of me feels na there's a good chance na konti mag-stabilize yung Taiwan-China relations. Bakit nga? Kasi katulad ng sinabi natin dun sa unang bahagi ng ating blog na unfortunately na-cut dahil sa internet connection, third world. Kasi both Xi Jinping and Lai ayaw nila ng giyera din. Although may pressure sa kanila to show toughness, both of them are also under pressure not to go to war dahil sa economic problems sila at home. In the case naman of Lai, most likely he'll not control the legislature. And as early as now, he's looking at a unity government. And he's looking at making certain concessions para to win over the opposition. Meaning, yung mga more pro-China or at least less anti-China elements. So there's some chance that actually behind the scenes there'll be efforts at stabilizing the relations. So on TV, on screen, and sa newspapers, sabihin ng China, walang, ganyan, ganyan, ganyan. Taiwan, sabihin niya malakas, ganyan, ganyan. But actually behind the scenes, I expect both sides rationality to actually have the upper hand. Not necessarily prevail, but have the upper hand. So kung ikaw ay nasa Pilipinas, anong gagawin mo ngayon? Kung ikaw ay nasa Pilipinas ngayon, ang gagawin mo ngayon ganito. Ang sasabihin mo, okay, ito na, nangyari na. Okay, yung ayon ng China daw manalo ang DPP, pero nanalo naman ang DPP dahil karamihan ng Taiwanese din naman na ayaw rin nila rin mag-reunify sa China. But the good thing is, both sides, both China and Taiwan, ayaw rin nila ng giyera despite all the rhetoric. So kung ikaw ang Pilipinas, ganito ang magiging diskarte mo. Sasabihin mo sa China, okay, andyan yung alyansa namin sa Amerika, andyan yung EDCA, hindi matatanggal yan. Tsaka hindi naman kami tanga. I'm sorry. Hindi naman kami, 'di ba, unwise, 'di ba? Because alam namin kung one on one lang tayo, no match tayo, 'di ba? No match ang Pilipinas sa China one on one. Pero kung may backup tayo, medyo may konting leverage tayo. But ang pwedeng gawin natin is yung sa mga bases na pinaka-north ng Philippines, wag natin bigay ng masyadong access ang mga kano. At actually pwede mo gawin 'yan on so many levels, mga kameta. So, sa ilalim ng EDCA, actually ang mga Amerikano, magkakaroon sila ng permiso na mag-preposition ng mga weapon systems. So, pwede sila maglagay ng mga malalaking armas. Now, pag sinasabi kong armas, hindi lang ito mga tanke or aeroplano. Pwede mga Patriot missile systems, pwede HIMARS systems, pwede very, very advanced military systems. No? Ang pwede gawin ng Pilipinas siguro, isasabihin niya, sige, papayagan pa rin namin yung mga kano na maglalagay sila ng mga sundalo dyan. Pero hindi namin papayagan ng mga kano na maglalagay ng napakalaki ng mga weapon systems na pwedeng gamitin in case of in case of gera, no? And at the same time, ililimit natin yung numbers ng mga kano na pwede ma-deploy dyan sa mga EDCA bases sa north. And dagdag pa dyan, off-limit ang Mavulis. Off-limit yung mga northern military bases sa Batanes. So you can give a 3-level mini concessions to China. Kapalit nun, etong kukunin mo sa China. Sasabihin mo sa China, oy, baka naman, alam ko mag-iingay ka, pero baka naman, gets mo naman, di ba? O, kasi kung ano ka, babawi ka, bibigyan namin ng mga Amerikano ng malalaking bases sa north malapit sa Taiwan. O, lagot kayo dyan sa Taiwan. No, pwede natin sabihin, baka naman, ang gawin mo naman ngayon, pag na-fortify namin yung Sierra Madre, dyan sa Ayungin Shoal, huwag kayong maggulo masyado. Huwag kayong masyadong bully-bully dyan, di ba? At gagawa kami ng mga facilities dyan sa Pag-asa ulit at saka mga ibang awak namin dyan. Huwag kayong masyadong gulo. Of course, again, on the record, lahat, matapang, ganun. Pero behind the scenes, pwede mo i-negotiate yan. So, dito ko nakikita, paano natin pwede leverage bilang isang Pilipino ang situation ngayon sa Taiwan in the interest of the Philippine national interest. And sa aking palagay, hindi naman ibig sabihin niya na we're gonna leave the Taiwanese to themselves. Taiwan will continue to develop its deterrence capability. Japan will continue to help Taiwan in one way or another. US will continue to help them. Pero pagdating sa Pilipinas, we can leverage this also to make sure na we have a better situation in the West Philippine Sea. Or at the very least, ang pwede natin gawin dito is i-tone down natin yung tensions ng konti. Kasi kung lahat tayo maximalist, yung China, sugod war games, tayo naman, bigyan natin ng laking access ng Amerika sa south ng Taiwan. Yung Japan naman, papasok din. Ay, wala talaga, talagang tayo. Eto na, pardagulan na yan, di ba? So I think we can be part of a de-escalation mechanism whereby we can tone things down a little bit and give diplomacy a chance. So see, that's my point I am for diplomacy, but I'm never for diplomacy from a position of weakness. Because diplomacy from a position of weakness is submission. And ang mga syunga lang gusto mag-submit. Or worst. Makapili. I am for diplomacy but from position of strength. And I'm for diplomacy with smart thinking. Yun pong hinahanap natin dito. Alright, on that note, thank you very much mga kameta. I hope you have a slight idea of the bigger geopolitical picture here at bakit bilang mga Pilipino, dapat may paki tayo sa nangyayari sa cross-strait relations sa pagitan ng Taipei at China. Because sa aking palagay, may directly na kinalaman nito dun sa EDCA strategy natin. at may direct na kinalaman ito doon sa mga pwede natin gawin diplomasya at negosasyon with China diyan sa West Philippine Sea. Lahat po yan ay related to each other. Hindi po yan isolated cases. Dapat po mag-integrated tayo mag-isip. At bilang isang independent, truly independent, of course, may aliado ka, pero hindi ibig sabihin na susunga-sunga ka. You have to think for your own national interest. And you have to contribute also to regional tensions de-escalation, di ba? So I am for diplomacy, I am for de-escalation, I am for the Philippine national interest, and I am for a smart strategy in dealing with this. So, yun ang sinasabi ko. Yun ang wala dun sa mga ibang makapili, yung mga ibang feeling expert, kasi hindi nila alam yung mga nuances. Hindi nila alam itong mga maliliit na bagay. Technicalities yan eh. Parang sa kotse yan. Yung mga alam mo yung manonood ng YouTube, akala nila, alam nila yung kotse, alam lang nila yung mga basic stats. Pero kung expert ka talaga sa kotse, you will see certain small details na hindi mo mahanap sa YouTube University. Ganun din po ang geopolitics. There are many little nuances here and there. So it's not diplomacy versus war. Ang mga nagsasabi lang yan, yung mga walang alam or makapili or worse, di ba? It's about diplomacy under what conditions? Diplomacy with what strategy? Diplomacy with what mindset? So I am 100% for diplomacy, but for smart diplomacy, right? And for diplomacy that serves the national interest of the Filipino people. On that note, maraming salamat mga kameta. I hope you enjoyed this analysis that we made. Now, down the road, God willing, we're hoping to do more like high-tech, and I don't know, my budget or something like that. We'll try to do an analysis where I can show all of these things to you in graphics, like 3D style, may ganyan, may map, pakita ko sa'yo, para mas ma-appreciate yung ginagawa ko. Para at least ngayon conceptual na gets nyo saan tayo galing. So when I make analysis of conflicts and issues, I look at the domestic politics, I look at the international politics, I look at the geography, I look at our national interests, I look at diplomacy, I look at psychology, I look at 10, 12 different variables and how they interact. This is next level chess game. That's how you do proper geopolitical analysis. Thank you very much mga kameta. God bless and talk to you soon. God bless. Thank you very much also. Pasensya na dun sa mga technical problems na this lesson learned, hindi na namin pilitin na ang dami-dami on habang inaayos pa namin internet. God bless and talk to you soon.